which is the most part of the Parsha is dealing with the story of the spies, famous story of the spies, um, that they're about to enter the land of Israel. They were supposed to enter Israel after 1 year in the desert, spending all the time at Mount Sinai. They've received the Torah, studied the Torah, received the tablets. They now have the second set. They built the Mishkan, and they're supposed to be heading towards Israel and decided to send spies. We're not going to get into the reasons. And they sent 12 representatives, one from each tribe. And we know they came back, and 10 of them said that in how they said it is another discussion, but essentially 10 of them said this is not going to work. And two of them, Yehoshua and Kalev, said absolutely we should go in. Hashem will take care of it. Don't worry, it's all good. And one of the major questions behind it is how did this happen? These 10 people who were not just anybody's, they were righteous people. We're indicating from the wording they were righteous people originally. So how did this happen? And numerous reasons given. One of the reasons that is given for why they sinned is because they were biased. And there are actually a couple of biased reasons, some for a negative and some for a positive. And one of the reasons is that they really had good intentions. They felt that living in the desert, you can imagine the Jewish people who were in the desert, they are at the foot of Mount Sinai. They are being fed every day miraculously with man. They're surrounded by the clouds of glory that are representing Hashem's protection. And they didn't have to work because they had food every day. We're told miraculously their clothing was clean and grew with them if there were kids growing, and they didn't have to go and do anything. They didn't basically have to make a living. So what did they do all day? They were studying Torah all day. Idyllic spiritual existence. So they said, why would we want to give that up? We're going to go into Israel and we're going to have to work hard because all these miracles are going to stop, right? We're going to end up that we're not going to be able to have this amazing spiritual existence. And according to some opinions, that's the reason why they found fault in going into Israel, because they really felt it was not a good thing for them to do spiritually. And we know that that's not the reality of how Hashem wants us to live in this world. Hashem wants us to live in this world with a living in the real world, so to speak, the normal world, the physical world, and infuse it with spirituality. Right? We don't believe in going up to the top of the mountain and isolating ourselves and not being connected to anything and just doing that. We believe in you have a normal life, regular with other people, and within that framework, you have to become the holiest person you could be. Right? Kedoshim to you, you shall be holy within the framework of the Torah. And at the second half of the Parsha, the Torah lists a couple of mitzvos, actually three mitzvos altogether, that are given to the people. A couple of them we're more familiar with. The last one at the end of the Parsha is the mitzvah of tzitzis, to put the tzitzis on a four-cornered garment. There's the mitzvah of challah, which is when we make dough, and we're going to bake a challah. So when we make the dough, we separate a portion of the dough to give to the Kohen. It was to give to the Kohen, but that's representing Hashem in that sense that we're giving away a portion of the dough that we are making. And then the third one is, this is not in order, the third one is called Nisuch Hayayin, when they were doing offerings on the altar, on the Mizbeach. There was a part of it was doing a wine libation that had to be done. And the Sefas Emes points out, quoted by Rabbi Frand, that all three of these mitzvos are really counter to the concept that according to this understanding that this was what the Meraglim wanted. This is all countering those ideas, because the idea of the nisuch hayayin, you're pouring the wine. Well, wine comes from grapes. Where did you get grapes? In order to grow grapes, you had to work. You had to work your vineyards, go out in the fields, and work hard and produce the grapes. And then you had to not only get the grapes, you had to make it into wine. There's a lot of work that was involved, physical labor that a person had to do, and basically be in this world. But you're going to take that produce that you've just grown, and you're going to use it for a spiritual purpose. We're not just going to drink wine just plain like this all day, but we're actually also using part of the wine for a mitzvah, a higher purpose in serving Hashem. So too with the challah. Challah doesn't grow by itself either. The dough didn't grow by itself. You had to go out in the fields, plant the grain, right? Then afterwards you had to process it until grinding it, etc. All of the different process steps in making the flour until you were able to make your dough, and then you give a portion to the Kohen. Also, again, a connection to the physical world, but infusing spirituality into it, because spirituality is necessary in the physical world. It all goes part and parcel. And finally, the mitzvah of tzitzis, which is where do the tzitzis come from? Well, we raise sheep. I mean, we don't, but people raise sheep. Right? Then you shear the wool, and from there you're making the clothing, right? And the tzitzis goes on your clothing. That's it's a four-cornered garment. You have to have a garment in order to put tzitzis on. And again, all of this is a physical. It's something you do. It's not something that's miraculous that all of a sudden your shirt and your whatever garment has sort of dropped from heaven, right? You have to work hard to get it. And then we say, no, but there's a mitzvah that's going to remind you of Hashem all the time. So all of these three mitzvahs really are involving a physical process that had to be done, and with the spiritual part at the end. And it's similarly, okay, we obviously are not growing the grapes ourselves. We're not growing the grain either, and we're not raising sheep and producing our own wool. However, we are at the end process of it all. But besides that, in everybody's life, we're doing different types of physical work in order to be able to sustain ourselves and make a living. Everyone has different aspects of things that we need to do, that we're not able to sit at home and have the manna drop from heaven and have our clothes automatically appear, right? We have to work for a living in different ways. All of that is, again, that physical world of which we are going to be going through that physical world, but with spirituality. Not only are we going to, of course, give tzedakah from our proceeds and still have these various mitzvahs associated with it, but in our daily life, in our daily interactions, and we really mentioned this recently in the Pirkei Avos class also, the idea that we are interacting, it's with the guidelines of Torah. We're carrying Torah with us all day, because everything that we do really is guided by the Torah. And in that way, we are infusing the entire physical existence with spirituality. And that is the goal that Hashem has for us. Not that we should live a life where everything is provided spiritually and we don't have to live that, but we are going to be living with a life that we have to work for, but ultimately infuse it with the spirituality. Also, that being said, maybe one caveat is, when we're younger, we do need to infuse ourselves with as much charging of the battery, so to speak, as possible. And therefore, when we're younger, the children do go to the school. They don't have to make the living, right? We send after we finish high school, we do need to go to yeshiva or seminary and charge our batteries with as much as possible before we get into the day-to-day life that we're all going to have to face. So there is a certain amount of getting ourselves ready for that existence, which that's what the Jewish people had in the desert. They had that idyllic existence, but then you can't stay there. You ultimately have to come out of that existence, go back into the real world, and use the charge that you had, use all of the spirituality that you were infused with when you were younger, and you had the ability to not have to worry about those things, and now infuse that into your daily life in order to be able to have that physical life infused totally with the spiritual and the Torah guidelines.